Good morning from Easier Habits. I'm Alec.
And I am Meg.
All right, this is your favorite 8 a.m. Central Business live stream. So go ahead and like and subscribe to be notified of future live streams. We'd love to have you join us in the chat, respond to your comments and answer your questions, etc. live, which is always exciting. Take requests for subjects. We had a meditation episode we did a while back with meditation specifically because it was requested by people in the live chat, so please do join us. Without any further ado, we'll go into our communication tip by Meg.
Yay, communication tip. So I realized that lately I've been kind of like, oh crap, communication tip, blah, last second right before this. And so I wanted to put a little bit more thought into it and wanting to do like different series of communication tips so that they're actually, like super helpful rather than just reflections on like my experience from the day previous. So one of the things that I've been asked about a lot lately is how to deal with awkward situations and the, kind of feeling of you being awkward or having that awkward, kind of conversation. Alec and I have talked about having hard conversations, but again, we're married. And so we already have kind of a bit of a rapport, right? So how can you deal with those awkward conversations with strangers that you don't necessarily know and who may or may not give you the benefit of the doubt, which I get is hard. And there's a lot of ways to do it, and there's no one perfect way, I would say. The one I want to talk about today, though, is just acknowledging the awkwardness, right? It isn't a complete, 100% going to work in every situation. But I've found that in a lot of situations, just saying, this is kind of awkward, huh? Will really diffuse the tension a lot. Because it acknowledges, it's like pointing out the elephant in the room, right? You guys are both feeling it. And then when you say it, it means they don't have to. Right? It takes that burden off of them. They can acknowledge it. You could talk about it if you needed to and then move on, or you don't even have to talk about it. You can just say like, yeah, this is awkward. I'm super nervous, or this is weird, right? Okay. So acknowledging it and giving the other person a moment to acknowledge it as well. If you're a little bit hesitant to say, this is awkward, you could turn it into a question, right? Is this awkward? Or asking them, hey, how are you feeling about this? I know this has the potential to be awkward. Where are you at, right? And so just having a quick check-in on the other person's mental status can also be a helpful way to, again, diffuse the tension or kind of acknowledge and deal with it so that you can move through it.
Yeah. You can also turn it into thank you. Hey, I know this is really unusual, but I really appreciate it.
Yes.
That's a way of acknowledging that something is not typical, but also making the person feel like very supported and or appreciated because of that. So
yeah, which also, I think a lot of people will have a tendency to try to apologize for the awkwardness, which I don't generally think is necessary unless you did something very specific to cause the awkwardness.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to say, I'm so sorry, this is really awkward. Like you could, I guess. That's another way to do it. But I like the gratitude more because it will help the other person, feel good about a little bit, better, I guess, about the interaction.
Yeah. You saying you're sorry does not help anyone unless someone holds a particular grudge against you.
Exactly.
And most of the time people aren't thinking about you. So like even if you negatively affected them, unless it was in some like really extreme or intentional manner, like most people are not going to be thinking about it.
Yep. Especially with these types of like not close relationships, right? It'll be just, okay, whatever. They're used to hearing it, right? And I think we feel like, I guess being raised as kids, and when something goes wrong, one of the ways to put it right is apologize, right? You get put in timeout, and then you have to apologize to come back. And so that's a habit that a lot of us, at least I did, kind of build up over the years of, okay, this is how I get back to a good situation. But it doesn't really work that way most of the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Well, So yesterday you had scheduled a couple hours to refine your packages. Not only that, but like put them into a nice PDF format so
Yes.
that you could share them. And then we're going to get back into outreach. How did that go?
That was so yesterday, as far as creating the document, I was so much more efficient than I was in making my, was it the business template, right? Partially because I already knew the template that I had used for that business template was actually from a pricing guide, and I really liked it. So I was like, ooh, I can just use this one again. Excuse me. There were a couple of kind of like, oh, I have to actually word this. How do I word this in a way that's going to, sound good and be informative, but not like overwhelm people with information, right? Because I don't know, I always second guess myself. I understand what the thing looks like in my brain, but how can I convey that in a concise manner to other people? And so that took a little bit of working. And that's where I spent most of my like actual concentrated like brain working time. For that particular portion, I did find myself falling down the rabbit hole of I have to have just the right picture in this spot. I'm always amazed at how much time I can spend looking at pictures and trying this one and trying that one, and maybe there's a better one. And so catching myself in that a few times, I did finally just have to stop so I don't have all of my pictures in there, because I was like, I'm just wasting time now. But I didn't waste very much time, and much less than I would have originally. So that was good. So I do have a couple more things to do on that, but I at least have like my 3 main offerings right now on there. I, again, have plenty of options for more, but I wanted to do at least those 3 so that I could have something, now, and then as I add things, then I can do that. The other thing is I got back into some of the outreach, not all of it. There's so much outreach. And so mostly yesterday was just responding to messages that I've received over this past week. And I focused on those, so I didn't get, it wasn't a 35 outreach, mostly because I was reacting rather than proactively, doing stuff. And so one of the things that I'm going to focus on today is getting those ones done first, and then having a dedicated time for other outreach. That's not just responding to the people who are messaging me. And so that's recognizing kind of that separation in my mind of, okay, here's my responding to other people section, and here's my outreach to, people in general, groups, and things like that. That's more specific than just a content post. Right?
Yep.
So
yeah, you get kind of getting different buckets. So there's the response bucket, and it needs time. You need time just to respond. There's the outreach bucket, and then there's kind of a non-specific post, right? Not targeted to someone in particular. Yeah. So the other thing that occurs to me with posts is, while you shouldn't generally, especially in Facebook, post the same post across multiple groups on the same day, you could because that looks spammy, and that's something that Facebook can detect, but you can do the same or similar posts on different days. So,
well, and
reuse stuff
within one group, or within different groups or whatever, but across different platforms, that is really common. So posting something to Instagram and Facebook at the same time, they have a button that you can do that.
Yeah, but even then, right, you could, if you have 2 different groups where the same content's relevant for, you could share them. It's not encouraged to do the same group on the same day at the same time, but even within a platform, right, that content can be placed in front of multiple eyes. So
I like that.
So yeah, there's definitely a way to multiply it. So there's those 3 different buckets. Anything that you learned from doing the outreach yesterday?
I mean, nothing new, just kind of it's hard, right? Again, because I had to go through multiple platforms. I had to look through email, Instagram, Facebook. I checked Twitter, but I didn't have any messages on there because I don't really use Twitter. LinkedIn, And scrolling down and looking through to, one, there's always that part of me that's like, oh crap, what if there's something major that I missed or something like that somebody was like, it was really important. Luckily, there wasn't any of that. Most of them were just birthday messages, but there were other ones, people, asking a question or something like that. And so, as I work on the constructing of my time as an effective, entrepreneur, that's something that I want to work on so that I don't have to have the, sorry for the slow post / thank you for your patience and me getting back to you, kind of a thing at the beginning of them, because I know that can be wearing on you and the other people. I mean, right. And this is something too that I recognize I'm not alone in responding slowly to messages sometimes, if at all. And so it's also kind of one of those awkward situations in life that people are used to, and a lot of us have done it. And so, I'm trying to balance that, right? Saying like, look, yes, we've all done this before. We've all, said, I'm not going to respond to this right now, forgotten about it for a week, and then been like, oh crap, now I have to acknowledge the fact that it's been a week. And so figuring out how to do that gracefully. But if I can eventually get, again, this, these buckets, right, set out, that will be a much less frequent occurrence. Yeah.
Well, and the typical pattern of the thing you put off weighing on you in the back of your mind, that happens to me too. Especially if you had a term for it when you're like avoidant to people seeking you out. What is that?
Persistent demand avoidance.
Yeah, I feel a little bit of that too. So like that's pretty common. I think, I think more generally a thing in our society, just because we have larger, shallower, acquaintances, and so it's not, it's we're getting requests and messages from lots of different people. At varying levels of intimacy, rather than just like the usual interactions with people well, and don't have to overthink or think too much about. Whereas like when someone you don't know is messaging you, I guess until you get really used to that, then there's a lot of brain activity for me that goes into figuring out like, all right, what's the right tone of voice, and how do I respond? What does this person really want, etc.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to some of the stuff. Was it yesterday or last week that I was talking? Whoa, the outside looks like weird. It's like a weird color. Sorry.
Yeah.
Easily distractible. It's very pretty though. So it's that idea of triaging your communication, right? Yep. And these relationships. So, again, figuring out who requires just a thank you, that was awesome, who requires a more in-depth thing. There are some people that I now know I cannot put off responding to because they will either freak out and think bad things, not because of, anything, is just kind of how they function or whatever, or it's just komaru. It causes problems, right? And so for those ones, I make sure to triage those ones, high, because there's a couple of those relationships that I really want to continue cultivating, obviously, or they're people I care about, right? So like my mom, I've talked to her about this, and she knows that I don't always respond immediately, and she's amazing with it, and fabulous, but it wasn't always like that. She used to worry that if I didn't respond, like there was something wrong, and she had to, really check on me. And, so I was able to kind of like, work with her on that. But there are certain, work relationships, right, that I want to appear professional and not like a flake. And so I prioritize those so that I have the effect that I'm going for.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so that's outreach, and maybe we can look into at some point today.
Sorry, it's really pretty.
So we have a very dark sky, but there's light breaking through behind the house, so you can kind of see like a dark gray, almost blue clouds with a little halo of yellow and yellow light. So that's what Meg is getting distracted by.
Welcome to my life.
But in any case, there Now I'm distracted.
Sorry, see?
It's contagious.
ADHD brain is like, oh my gosh. And there's this right here, I think, honestly, though, is a good example of what happens to me, again, on a regular basis, where something like that's out of the ordinary. See, it's not quite as pretty now because the sun kind of calmed down. Can really affect me and really disrupt my focus. There was a part of me that actually I let that happen. Like I recognized it was starting to, and there was a moment when I could have just, okay, ignore that, focus here. This is what I'm doing. But I also, want this to be an honest reflection of who I am as a person. Just in case anybody else deals with this.
Well, I think there's value. So what we want to chronicle is the journey from, having your own business, but, not consistent clients at the rates you want, etc., to building out that pipeline. Like, that's the story we're going for. We don't know how long that will take. But, I think also acknowledging that he's not just doing that for anybody, but, doing it for someone who has ADHD and other challenges. I think that is helpful to recognize. But to simplify and streamline things, at least on the outreach front, we can look into software today, maybe together. I know there are a lot of softwares for and platforms for posting to multiple places and scheduling that in one area, which makes the content side more easier. But I would be surprised if at least one of them hasn't also collected the messaging from the different apps so that you could do it in one place and kind of power through a lot quicker. So we can take a look at that. And the third thing I also remembered just to check in is, does Jeremy, our marketing consultant from Innovative Marketing, does he have everything he needs in his survey?
I should check on that. He sent me a message yesterday, but I was working on the other things, and it was, again, as I was triaging, I was like trying to get all of those things out as fast as possible. And so that's going to be a higher thing on my list today.
So if you make sure he has whatever he needs to go forward and do his market research, then, and that was like updated lists of competitors.
I did already send that to him.
Packages, etc. So if he has that, then you can kind of do your outreach in parallel while he does the research, right? But you want to make sure he has what he needs to go forward on so that hopefully we can have some great strategic insight that can feed back into not only our outreach and your content plan, but also maybe running some actual ads, etc. So.
Well, and that's one of the things too that I'm, always very cognizant, very aware of, because, there are certain things that you get that stopgap, right? Where someone has to do something before anyone else can do their thing. And I hate being that. I hate being the, bottleneck for all of these things. And that right there, more than any of the other kind of mental loads, is the one that weighs heaviest on my mind. And for some reason is the one most likely to cause me to not do the thing that will clear the bottleneck. Which
you avoid the stress,
right? And so even though like doing the thing obviously would be so much more effective and helpful for everybody, but just because there is that extra affect to it, I have that default tendency to avoid, right? And so, working on leaning into that so that, yes, there will be times when I am the bottleneck, and that's okay. And work to, try to do things so that it can be in parallel, so that people aren't waiting on me for things, but that we can be working on things together. But also, it happens. There's moments of stoppage, and it's about continuing momentum rather than letting that just like shut everything down.
Yep. So, I think that kind of covers what we have for today.
Yay!
All right. Again, if this has been helpful for you, like and subscribe, leave comments below. Join us at 8 a.m. Central Time to leave chats or questions that we can respond to live, and because we'd love to talk to you and help you in your entrepreneur journey. And until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a time.